Instagram, and now we are live on Facebook. Hi, everybody. It's Jeremy, the Existential Wine Guy. I come at you every Wine Wednesday, almost every Wine Wednesday, about 5:30 or so. Let's adjust this real quick. About 5:30 or so, we talk for a few minutes just about wine and what's going on in the wine world. Sometimes we have specific subjects and themes, and other days we just kind of wax philosophically. We have a lot to talk about this particular episode. There's a lot going on in Sacramento. Right now it is Unified Wine and Grape. And for those of you who are not familiar with this, this is really kind of an industry convention. It's absolutely cool. It's a lot of fun. One thing that happens is it's one of the largest sort of wine, grape and wine conventions in the world. So one thing that happens is it's Sacramento, and the entire world the wine world just descends on Sacramento, and it's really cool. It's you walking through the streets of Sacramento, and you have people from all over speaking all sorts of great languages, and it's just it's a really amazing vibe. There is a downside to it because Sacramento, we are so kind of awesome that the food scene in Sacramento has been elevated in such a huge way that trying to get a reservation at any decent restaurant in the midtown and downtown area of Sacramento is almost impossible. But that's okay. It's a nice trade-off. Another thing, if you know anything about me, is that I'm a big fan of Sacramento, and we love promoting Sacramento as well. So the fact that we have all these different people from all over the world visiting our town, and just every year that they come and visit, the town gets bigger and better, and it's really a cool scene. Back to Unified Wine and Grape. This is a convention specifically. It really goes much more towards grape growers and winemakers. So it's an industry convention. So it's not always the cool and elegant part of the final product. Although there is a lot of tasting, and I bet there's going to be a lot of parties going on all through the downtown and midtown Sacramento. I know there's a lot of hosted parties, and I'm hoping to head out a little bit later and join a couple of them. That's going to be a lot of fun. But the convention itself, it's absolutely huge. And when you walk into the Sacramento Convention Center, it's expanded. You'll see everything from incredibly large tractors, all sorts of vineyard equipment and things like that, and then to the kind of nuts and bolts of winemaking. Everything from portable storage tanks. There's guys in there who actually have processes for lowering the alcohol in wine. I know we say why, but sometimes it can be appropriate. As well as going to the final product, all sorts of bottles and labels, and the cooperages from all over the world are actually attending here as well. So it's a really cool setup. If you are in the wine industry, it's kind of a must-go-to sort of thing. And even if you're not in the industry, you check it out once or twice. It's really a lot of fun. Just going onto the exhibits floor gives you kind of not just a greater understanding for how wine can be made, or how wine is made, the processes involved, and everything from growing vines to finding a way to get to your bottle in some sort of store somewhere, and everything in between. It's really cool. So it gives you a greater understanding of how that process works. It gives you a much bigger appreciation for how much work goes into every single bottle of wine. I know I've said this before on my show, but the mere idea that we start off with these tiny berries, grapes on the vines, and somehow through the process it makes it all the way into the bottle and on your table and in your meal, and it tastes fantastic. So it's a real tribute to every single step in the process of getting stuff there. So I actually got sort of kind of sponsored. One of my friendly wineries, New Clairvaux, was able to get me a ticket in, which means I didn't have to pay for it. So thank you so much for them. I'm going to actually meet up with them later and just properly thank them, and just hang out, because they're a really cool bunch, and they're doing some really interesting things. For those of you who caught my broadcast a while back, and we were talking about examples of oak Chardonnay and stainless steel Chardonnay, and the differences and the taste tests, and they even have a little game that you can do with friends and everything to note the different characteristics. It's really a lot of fun. So they're the ones who came up with that. So many thanks to New Clairvaux, and I hope to see you guys a little bit later tonight. Now, I know I said that I was going to talk about actually wines from the Baja region, and I'm really kind of amped up about this, and I'll talk about why in a second. But if you just joined me, again, it's Jeremy, the Existential Wine Guy, and we're right now going to talk a little bit more, or talk about wines from the Baja region. As the people who've been watching for a while, you know that I took a new gig, and I'm working with a wine broker, and one of the wines that we got is this whole series of wines from the Baja region. These are being imported in. They're absolutely fantastic. Every single one that I have tasted so far has been pretty amazing. The reason I got into it, though, was about a year ago. I had some friends of ours, Rachel and Gary, and they had just been down in that region, and I read a little bit about it, but they brought over 3 or 4 wines. And when they came over, I was super excited because just 4 or 5 months before that, Sunset Magazine did a whole spread, and they kind of featured 3 or 4 wineries in the Baja region. And my first thought, of course, was, are you kidding me? Wines, vines even growing in such a hot climate, in Baja, like it's almost counterintuitive, except if you look at that area and you realize that it really does have a much more Mediterranean climate in there. It does cool down at night, through some of the mountains out there as well. And they're basically growing the exact type of grapes that you would expect to be grown in that sort of Mediterranean area, and kind of that's in Italy as well. So, everything from Cab, actually, but you're looking at Nebbiolo, the Italian varietals, Barbera, Sangiovese, and everything in between. So when Gary and Rachel came over, going through 3 or 4 of these wines were absolutely amazing. And what I was really impressed with was that I'm a big fan of blends, because I think that when you have a really good blend, it can really show off the talent and creativity of the winemaker. Some blends don't work, sure, and I think there's a reputation that some blends get, that they get them because they think that blends are just the substandard grapes. In some cases that could be true, but more and more we're starting to see really great grapes and being thrown in, and it's really kind of a lot of fun. So, real quick, I'm just going to say hi to a couple people. Russ, thank you so much. You're always it's always good to see you there. John as well, thank you, from New Clairvaux. So thank you again. I give a little shout out to you guys earlier. We also have Art from Echo on Instagram, and Vine Journey joined. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys showing up. So, why that region? So what I was excited about were the blends that were happening in this area. And also, the blends that I was being presented with were crazy stupid. I mean, something that you would just never see really anywhere else. Specifically, like blending Nebbiolo, which is a really expensive grape when coming from like the Barbaresco area and northern Italy that way. But you're seeing these blends with that, with Barbera, Sangiovese, Merlot. I mean, just things you don't, seeing things outside of the norm. And I thought it was just kind of a creative challenge that was sort of happening in that area. As I started to learn more and more about the wines coming from that area, one thing that you're seeing is a lot of European winemakers leaving France and Italy, places where the winemaking is fairly strict. In some of those regions, in fact, it's not so much that you don't have a lot of creativity with it. You're making very specific wines. You're making a cab, and it's going to be in a particular style because from a particular place. And there's really not a lot of room to switch it up. It's going to change how the wine is perceived. It may not get the same price for it. I think you see the same thing happening economically in Napa and even some of the Sonoma area, where you don't see really creative blends, because if you're growing a Cabernet grapes, you have to sell it for a certain price. And anytime you start doing these blends, you don't fetch the same price. So while it's more of a regional thing for France and Italy and in parts of Spain as well. In Napa, it's become an economical thing. You don't see a lot of variance. You don't see a lot of creativity, and you're stuck with, well, not stuck. I mean, they're making extraordinary wine, but it's really kind of, it's a narrowly made. Now we've got this Baja region where it is literally the Wild West. There are no rules to the winemaking. There, you can call anything anything, and you're not stymied by very specific appellation requirements of how you're going to label your wine. So it's really cool that these mostly European winemakers are coming out, settling or doing some work down in the Baja area and just going for it. Just, I mean, they are creating wines that they've never actually been able to create before. As a wine drinker, as a wine taster, for me, it's even more exciting because all of a sudden we have like kind of this new region to play around with, and we're tasting things that really have, really not been put together before. So, one great question might be, what are these wines, what are the characteristics of these wines? Well, right now you're seeing these wines that have an old world sort of push towards it, but definitely this is new world fruit. We're talking big, slightly higher tannins, a little bit more acidic, but big, in some cases, big fruit bombs as well. So right now, they don't have one style. But you would suspect them to be a little bit more in the sort of California stream of flavors and overall tone. So if you're just joining me, again, it's Jeremy, the Existential Wine Guy, drinking a little bit of vino. We've been talking about unified wine and grape, how it descends on Sacramento and really kind of changes our town. It really brings everything up. If you get a chance to talk to any of the restaurateurs, they're certainly just talking about how they are just booked. They've been taking reservations for the last 6 months, and everybody's calling in favors just to get at a table, just to get 4 people to sit down in one place, and really it energizes our town. So it's really a lot of fun. We've also, as promised, I was talking about wines from the Baja region. Like I said, as I've started to represent these wines, I got to learn a little bit more about it and get even more excited because this is a region that I've been following for the last year or a couple years now. And now that I'm getting to taste a little bit more, now that I'm getting to understand who the principals are and what their philosophies are in the winemaking, it's an exciting time to be into wine. Let's also say hi to a couple other people. Jenny, always good to see you here. Thank you so much for watching. And on Instagram, Maria Gardo7, and I just butchered your last name and I apologize, but thank you so much for joining me. It's always good to see you guys here. I'm always looking to answer questions that are out there. I know that I took last week off. I actually got a couple of interesting questions about decanting. And I thought decanting was a fairly non-political sort of subject to talk about, and certainly I was wrong. And there was a little bit of back and forth on some of the social media stuff, but more importantly, I started asking my Somm friends, what their thoughts are on it. And oddly, it blew my mind. The philosophies about decanting and when to do it, when not to do it, really have changed a lot, certainly in the last 5 to 10 years. So next week, we're going to dedicate a whole show. We're going to do a little decanting, and I'm going to take your questions and would love to hear your thoughts on it. But right now, we're talking about wines from the Baja region. And getting back to the Baja region, we have much more of a Mediterranean climate. And again, I was one of those that thought, okay, growing vines in that area, you've got to be insane. And again, counterintuitively, vines do great in that area. As most of us know, a stressed vine is a good vine. So actually, vines that use less water end up growing a little bit stronger. They're reaching for the water down into the earth to draw it back out. So, and when they do that, you get, more minerality. You get more of an aspect of the terroir of that particular region floating through the roots of the vines and coming in through the grapes. So, it's a really interesting thing that, all of a sudden we have a whole new wine region to play around with and watch it evolve, to see the European influences, the new world influences in that particular area, and to see what's going to come about it. Now, one thing that is also interesting about that area is these wines are not necessarily what you might expect in terms of cost-wise. We think there's a lot of like Spanish wines which I absolutely love, but they're also really inexpensive. They found an easy way to get into the US. For whatever reason, and we're not going to go into that right now, getting wines up from the Baja region, or basically getting wines from Mexico, has certainly is a bit of a challenge and a little bit more costly. So when you go out and like sort of look for these wines, you're not going to find any really in the $9.99 bin anywhere. These wines actually do carry a little bit higher of a price point, and it's kind of exciting to see that. I think artists should get paid. I certainly believe that winemakers are artists, and so it's nice to see a mid-range wine, and by that I mean a little over $20. You're probably going to see them in the area from if you're in a restaurant from $22, $25, up into the $100 range. Truly, you're going to see stuff like that. If you're looking for some of these wines in the store, I would say good luck. I would say you're going to need to start asking for it. A lot of these are a little harder to get and aren't just everywhere yet. So you'll definitely, wherever you're going to buy wine, and you want something from the Baja region, you're probably going to need to request it. So if it's your favorite bottle shop, even if it's your supermarket, don't be shy. Let people know, what you want, and see what they're able to bring in for you. And always, if you need references to where you might be able to buy some of these wines, hit me up on social media, whether it be Instagram or Facebook, what have you. I'm here to answer those questions as well. Let's see, it's about 5:48. We're almost done here. Again, it's Jeremy, the Existential Wine Guy. Today I've been talking about the Unified Wine and Grape Convention in Sacramento. It's absolutely huge. I bet I'll be talking about it a little bit next week after I've gone through a few days of it and see what's come about it. We've also been talking about wines from the Baja region, and just saying that you should be trying some of these wines out. You should definitely be asking for them in your restaurants and wherever you're buying wine. These are wines, if you like California style wines, I think you're absolutely going to love these, and I think you're going to find like a new and sort of interesting twist on these wines. They're going to be absolutely lovely for you. So we're pushing 5:50. We probably should end things unless I have any questions. I really just want to thank everybody who watches this. I get a lot out of it. It forces me to to brush up on my knowledge and try to share it with you. And again, would love to hear questions, comments, concerns about wine or the wine industry. I think you must, I'll finish this a little bit of West Coast, Northern California news. Rombauer has bought out my old working place. I used to work for Renwood Winery up in Amador County, make amazing zins. Joe Schabel is the winemaker there. Rombauer has come in and over a course of about a year or so has they bought out, they've made the announcement. The last day of operations for Renwood will be on March 2nd. So if you're in this area, I was just up there this weekend to say hi and to kind of talk to people and to kind of get a feel of like the vibe there. didn't even get a chance. The place was absolutely packed and people are buying up the store. There's still product left there, to be sure. They're still doing a bunch of deals, but if I have a recommendation for you, definitely get up there, or even go online. It'll be some of the best California Zin that you'll taste. All right, everybody, because of Unified, I'm gonna go back out and say hi to a few people. But again, thank you so much for watching the show. Next week, we are going to be talking about decanting, do's, don'ts, new ideas. If you have questions ahead of time, let me know. I would love to hear from you. Till then, cheers. Take care, guys. And I'm turning this off, I swear.